The Siege of Khartoum was a pivotal event in Sudanese and British history. It took place in Khartoum, Sudan from March 1884 to January 1885. The siege unfolded on the banks of the Blue Nile, at the confluence of the White Nile, where the city of Khartoum stood as a strategic outpost in the Sudanese desert. The siege was a clash of empires and ideologies, pitting the British Empire against the Mahdist Sudanese, a religious movement led by Muhammad Ahmad, who declared himself the Mahdi, a messianic figure in Islam. The siege had its roots in the complex political and religious landscape of 19th century Sudan. Egypt, under British influence, sought to maintain its control over Sudan, which it had ruled since the early 1820s. However, Egyptian rule was challenged by the Mahdist movement, which gained momentum in the 1880s. At the heart of this historical drama were two central figures, Major General Charles George Gordon, a British officer, and Muhammad Ahmad, the self-proclaimed Mahdi. Gordon, a charismatic and enigmatic figure, had earned a reputation for his military prowess and administrative skills in China and Africa. The British government tasked him with overseeing the evacuation of Egyptian forces and civilians from Sudan. The Mahdi, on the other hand, was a charismatic religious leader who had united Sudanese tribes under his banner. He sought to rid Sudan of foreign influence and establish a theocratic state. His message resonated with many Sudanese who felt marginalized and exploited under Egyptian rule. The Mahdi's forces, driven by religious zeal and a desire for independence, posed a formidable threat to the established order. The siege commenced in March 1884, as the Mahdist army, vastly outnumbering the Anglo-Egyptian garrison, surrounded Khartoum. The Mahdi's forces, though not as well equipped as their opponents, were numerous and determined. They cut off Khartoum's supply lines, isolating the city and its defenders. The siege dragged on for months, with the defenders facing dwindling supplies, disease, and constant attacks. Gordon, with his small but resolute force, implemented a tenacious defense, utilizing his limited resources to fortify the city and repel the Mahdist assaults. He rallied the city's inhabitants, inspiring them to resist the siege. Section 4. A desperate defense holding out against the Mahdist forces. Life in Khartoum during the siege was one of hardship and resilience. Food and ammunition became increasingly scarce, and the constant threat of attack loomed over the city. Gordon's charisma and leadership were crucial in maintaining morale, but the situation grew increasingly desperate. The Nile, their lifeline, was under the Mahdi's control. Despite the dire circumstances, Gordon refused to abandon the city. He sent numerous pleas for reinforcements to the British government, but his calls for help went unanswered for months. Section 5. The Fall of Khartoum, Tragedy and its Aftermath. The siege reached its tragic climax in the early hours of January 26, 1885. Taking advantage of a breach in the city's defences, the Mahdist forces stormed Khartoum, overwhelming the exhausted defenders, who fought valiantly but were ultimately no match for the Mahdi's numbers. Gordon, refusing to surrender, was killed in the fighting. The fall of Khartoum sent shockwaves through Britain. The death of Gordon, a national hero, sparked outrage and grief. The British government was criticised for its delayed response to the crisis. The siege had a profound impact on Sudan. It marked the end of Anglo-Egyptian rule and the beginning of the Mahdist state, which lasted for over a decade. The legacy of the siege, however, remains complex and contested, serving as a reminder of the human cost of colonialism, the power of religious fervour, and the enduring significance of Sudan in the geopolitical landscape.